All right, so we're going to start writing some tests for the user that we're missing. And before I do that, though, I noticed that on the last video, we had this database and record imports, which are really not required because they're only being used for the signature for the parameters of the function. And this is something that I, sometimes struggle with, and I'm sure you do too. So remember that if you're using inside the function itself, like database, record, like whatever you're importing, then that's fine. But if you're just using the that import for the signatures, then you should just do type checking and import them only on type checking run. So for that, we're gonna do if type checking, and then just indent this. And the last thing is put the parameter or the function parameter in strings so that when it runs in production, it just ignores that. It's just like, oh, this is some string. It doesn't really import anything. But if type checking is set, it knows that it's going to have to import those modules. So that's one change that I noticed that we should have in our code. Okay, so we're ready to continue working on our test for the user. And so I noticed that there's some red squiggly lines here. They're definitely easy things to fix, but they're about type annotations and return types. So we're gonna fix those really quickly. So for this, we need to add a return type. So this returns a dict. Next, we're gonna do this type annotation. I'm just gonna do any for these ones because these are like very complicated async generators, and so I'm not really worried about having this properly, like super well assigned. I know what create test client is, so I'm just gonna add any there, and we're gonna need to import this. So from typing, import any, and that should fix that. The same thing here, and we need to do a return. This returns none. These are just asserts. And the last one here. Okay, so looks like we're still missing this one. Typo there. And we're gonna do typing ignore here. Okay, looks like we're good to go. So let's add a couple of more tests in here. So one is the test successful login. I need create all and create test tab. So I'm gonna copy this one here. We're gonna call this test successful login. So it has create test client, create all, and create test app. But here we're gonna do login. We're gonna send the form and for redirects equals true. And here we want to get data. Test user is in the string body. And the next thing we're gonna check is that the session is being set. So we're gonna do a sync with create test client dot session transaction. So this allows us to look within a session, and we can then assert that the session of user ID is equal to 1. So this is something that you kind of need to always remember is if we're gonna check sessions, use this this method of session transaction. Okay, we're gonna do 2 more tests. Let's do another one to test if the user is not found on the login. So we're gonna name this test user not found login. We're gonna have test create test client and create all. We don't need the test app. And so the same thing, we're gonna do login, but in this case, the form is gonna be custom because we're gonna pass a dictionary. So we're gonna say form username and then comma, password is test 123. Because this user doesn't exist, we should have an error. We don't need to follow the redirect. And so now we're gonna say body equals await response get data, and then assert user not found in string body. And the last one is pretty similar. It's just the wrong password. So we're gonna use the right username but not the right password. So test wrong password login. So we're gonna say form the test user is the username, which is the right one, but the password is test 123. Actually, let's say wrong 123 for the password, and we're gonna get the data, and then we should assert the user not found in string body. So everything looks good so far, but there are some issues that we're not taking into account here that I'm gonna walk you through. One is each test. Remember that I told you that each test is independent from each other. So what happens is on this test successful login, we are testing that the user can log in using this username and password from userdict, right? The problem is that we have never, like at this point, we haven't created really a user. So this test is going to fail with that issue of the user is not going to be found. So that's one problem. So we're going to have to add, and it's going to be a little repetitive, but we could do a function to register a user, and it would be okay, but it wouldn't be. We would have to pass like the test client, and it would be a little messy. So I think that it's worth just registering the user by having just that one line on each one of the login tests. So let's do that first, just to get that out of the way. So I'm going to copy the register function here, and I'm going to add it to each one. And let's put just like a comment here, create test user. So that's problem number one. Problem number two that I see here is that we're testing that the user is being displayed on here on the test user on the string. But if you look at the view, when it returns when it's logged in, it says user logged in. It's not really showing the username in there. So we should add the username in there. And this is temporary. Remember that when we actually have a home page, we're going to redirect to the home page where the user is going to be displayed on the navbar as @username. So we're going to mimic that by adding an F string here and then adding the session username, and we're going to use single quotes. And remember to add the let's close the brackets, and remember to add the @ because that's how we're going to display it on the home page. So we're going to say user @session username logged in as an F function. That takes care of that. However, there's a bigger problem that we're going to face, which is this part here, the session get CSRF token. Now what happens is when you run the login function here, you see how it's saying create test client post login. So it's not going to the get methodology first, which creates the CSRF token and plants it. And we don't really need to create a CSRF token if we're running a test. We just want to check all the things because the CSRF token is not something that we really need to test. So we're going to have to add something because this if user row block here that you see here, if we're not passing the CSRF token, it's going to fail because it's going to go to line 101 and it's going to say the session gets its CSRF token, which doesn't exist because we went directly to post. We didn't go through the login get version first. And so it's going to error out in here. It's going to say error invalid post contents, and then it's going to check if user row, which is not being set. We're just skipping this else, and so it's not even like getting the user row anywhere. So we could either define the user row here as a none and avoid that error, but I think it's better if we just like say if we're on a test session to skip setting the or checking the CSRF token is valid or deleting it from the view in this line here. So to do that, we're gonna do something called the current app testing flag, and I think we don't have current app. Oh, we do have it. So we have current app in here. So we can go to the login and say in this line, if session, so we're going to put a parenthesis here, if session get CSRF token is not equal to form get and not, well, Copilot almost got it right. So it's current app dot testing. So if we're not running a test, then fall into this error message. So we're not, if it's a current app testing, that means that this whole elif is just like skipped, and we can follow into the next section. And then the same thing here, we're gonna say if current app dot testing, actually if not current app testing. So if we're not running a testing session, then go ahead and delete the session CSRF token and then continue with the rest of the thing. So that is necessary for us to be able to test the application in the proper way. So if we go ahead and run the test now, there's still an error, and what's going on in here is it says string user SVAR logged in is not the same as test user. And I just realized that I'm using SVAR here as the dict, which I don't like to put my username in code. And I think originally this was test user. So I'm not sure like why we put SVAR in there. But I'm going to save that test user, and I think that would be it. So perfect. Now all our tests are passing, and definitely didn't like that SVAR in there. So I hope that made sense, and this is in a good place for us to continue with the next lesson. So good job.